when the Jewish people brought offerings, daily offerings, which atoned for the entire Jewish nation. It was here. It was right here. It was forbidden when the temple was erected. The first temple was forbidden for anyone to make their own altars, their own bamos, their own altars made from one pillar, one stone, or any amount of stones, or any altar. It all had to be brought here, and it represented the prayers of the Jewish people. I had an interesting thought the other day, which I told my brother, and he thought it was MS, which I want to share with you. He thought it was a truthful thought. It's interesting. The Western Wall, when you come, you see there's a lot of visitors from all over the world that come here. It's not just really, it's a Jewish place of worship, place of prayer. But it's not at all uncommon. It's quite common, rather, to see people from all over the world, literally from every country, come. And they have these white, I don't know if you've seen them, paper kippot, the paper yarmulkes that they give out. And I've seen, even just this night, by the way, a little bit earlier, this evening, or this morning, I should say, there was a man, it looked like he was from Asia somewhere, and he was praying fervently to God. And he was really, he was, I get inspired, and he was, coming here, and it's not uncommon. And the truth of the matter is that, which in contrast, many other holy sites in Israel, you don't really see. It's really exclusive to the Jewish people. Of course, we have Maras HaMachpelah, the cave of in Hebron, where the patriarchs and matriarchs are buried, and that is, there's a big Muslim presence there. They also, take credit. They want to take credit that they're from, Abraham, and there's a strong presence there. But by and large, the Western Wall, you see so many people flocking there from throughout the world, and of all nations, right? And I was telling my brother that we find in the prophets, King Solomon, when during the inauguration of the first temple, which we read over the holiday of Sukkot, in the Haftorah, he calls it a place for all nations. It's ki beisi beis tefillah l'chol ha'amim. It's for all nations to come and to pray. And the Ola offering, the offering which was completely brought on the temple, on the mizbeach, on the altar, anyone for the nations of the world could bring. So you see, even without we're waiting for the temple to be rebuilt, but even now, we know that in place of the temple we have. In place of the temple, we have the prayers, and the Western Wall is really where we bring our offerings and our prayers to God, and it continues on this idea that it's for the nations of the world, that the nations of the world continue to come, not to the temple because we don't have the temple, we're waiting for the temple to be rebuilt, but they come to the Western Wall, and it's because it's a house for all nations. That's one idea which I think is true. I want to talk about another idea, which is found in the Tzlach. The Tzlach is a commentary on the Talmud, on the Babylonian Talmud, which was written. The Tzlach is a commentary which was written by Rabbi Yecheskel Landau, who was the rabbi. He was called the Noda B'Yehuda. That's based on his responsa. And his commentary on Talmud is called the Tzlach, Tzlach, and it's an acronym for Tzion L'Nefesh Chaya, and his mother was named Chaya, and he named his work on the Talmud in memory of the soul of his mother Chaya. Tzion, it represents a monument, L'Nefesh, for the soul of Chaya, of his mother Chaya. So he speaks about, he has a beautiful piece in Tractate Brachos, on about, I think it's folio 57. The Talmud there says something very fascinating. The Talmud speaks about the when we eat bread, there's a mitzvah to make a blessing, wash your hands, make a blessing before, rabbinic mitzvah. And, it's a mitzvah to, before we partake of any food or drink, we make a blessing. It's sort of as a spiritual payment and acknowledgement that it's from God, which is what we do. There is a mitzvah, though, from the Torah, one of the Taryag, which is the 613 commandments, according to everyone, to, after we eat bread, to say Birchas Hamazon, Birchat Hamazon, to bench, in what people call it, to bless in Yiddish, right? And there are 4 blessings that we say after a meal with bread. The first one, the Talmud says, Moses composed, right? The first blessing, Hazan Olam Kulo B'Turo B'Chilim B'Chesed V'Rachamim, and Hazan Sakol, it ends with, you are the source of all blessing, who nourishes, all life and everything. That was composed by Moses when the Jewish people ate the mun, when the manna fell down in the wilderness. The Jewish people ate the mun, and that was composed as a blessing that Moses made. The second blessing is no delacha, that we thank you for the land and for we speak about the circumcision, we speak about Torah learning, and we're thinking, but primarily the blessing focuses on God thanking that the Jewish people thanking God for the land of Israel. And that was composed, says the Talmud, by Joshua when the Jewish people entered the land of Israel. When the Jewish people entered the land of Israel, it was composed by Joshua. And that second blessing is what we say to this day. The third blessing begins with Rachem. God have mercy on Yisrael on your altar, on the Jewish people, on Jerusalem. And the beginning part of that blessing was composed by King David before the temple. And the next part of the verses was composed by his son, King Solomon, when the temple was built. And that's the third blessing. The fourth blessing, those 3 blessings are from the Torah. They were composed by various, the greatest of the greats. But the idea to make 3 blessings, thank God, after we eat a meal with bread, is biblically ordained. It's a mitzvah from the Torah. The fourth blessing was added on much later. The fourth blessing was added on a little while after the destruction of the second temple. I don't remember exactly the dates offhand. Maybe 100 years or so, if I remember correctly. After the second temple was destroyed, a couple 100 years, a generation or so after the temple was destroyed. It might have even been the end of that generation of the temple was destroyed. And it commemorates the Haruge Beitar. That is, there was a city, which actually is pretty close. It's about 20, without traffic, it's about 20, 25 minutes from here, from the Western Wall, or 30 minutes. It's called the town of Beitar. And it was a town of, it was a tremendous city of a lot of Jewish people that lived there. And the Talmud speaks about that for whatever reason, they thought that they were rebelling, the Romans. It is after the destruction of the second temple, and they massacred the city, basically, and they killed hundreds of thousands of Jews. The Talmud says that, however, and they didn't allow burial of the bodies for a while. When they eventually allowed it, they saw that the bodies were actually intact. They weren't eaten up by animals or whatnot, and they didn't putrefy, something which they saw was something miraculous. And they enacted the fourth blessing to commemorate the Haruge Beitar, the people that died in this city of Beitar, that they were eventually able to bury them. Atov, that's the first part of the blessing of the fourth blessing. The Hametiv, and God is good and does good, and that they did not putrefy, that the bodies remain whole, that they were able to, and they saw, that even in the time of tremendous sorrow, they saw the silver lining, they were able to see God in their life. And that's the fourth blessing that we say in the grace after meals. Now, the tzlach asks the obvious question. Rabbi Yecheskel Landau, in his commentary on this Talmud, on this piece of Talmud in Tractate Brachos, he says that why in the world, like why is it in that? I understand the first blessing when the manna fell, that Moses said the text for all the Jewish people when the manna fell. I understand the second blessing when the Jewish people went into the land of Israel by Joshua, and the third blessing also by King David and Solomon, praying for Jerusalem, praying for the Jewish people. That's all that all makes sense. But the fourth blessing and why in Grace After Meals of all places do we need to commemorate this miracle? Why is it particularly over here? Why is it Bedafka specifically here that we always commemorate this when we're finished eating our meal? What does it have to do with Grace After Meals? So he says something very fascinating. He says that the people of Beitar are on a very high level, that their bodies did not putrefy, they remain intact. And he says it represents a person being able to overcome their desires, their base desires to eat and to overeat and to eat more than they need to indulge in eating. And he says that in the exile, right, because the city of Beitar was after the destruction of the second temple, so they didn't have the temple anymore. But yet we see that they were on such a level that, and they overcame this representation that their bodies were intact. That represents that they overcame the sircha, the putrefy, which represents this idea that it comes from that they can't, that they're able to overcome their passions of overindulgence in this world. And he explains further, he says something very beautiful. He says that it's a lesson to all of us that we should not think, says the Rabbi Shmuel Golshevsky, that we don't have a temple today and we're in exile. He was in Europe. The Rabbi Shmuel Golshevsky was a rabbi of which city was he in? He was in, I believe he was in Prague. No, the Maharal was in Prague. Rabbi Yaakov Lowy, who was a little bit before him. It escapes me where he was the rabbi of, but city in Europe, a big city in Europe. He was a great Torah giant, great rabbi of his times in the 1600s. So he says that a person might feel we don't have a temple anymore, so we can't reach such madrigos, such high levels. And it is what it is. I'm gonna eat, I'm gonna live my life, and I can't expect to elevate myself too much because we don't have a temple. We're not in Israel anymore, and we're in the exile. And he says it's specifically in benching Grace After Meals where we want to bring home this idea that a person can overcome even in the exile, and that the people of Beitar, this city, it was after destruction of the temple, and they were able to overcome. And he says it's a lesson for all of us that we can also in the exile connect to God through his Torah, through the learning of Torah, we can elevate our lives, we could extend ourselves spiritually, we could push ourselves more spiritually, everyone according to their level, and that will cause a spiritual elevation, each and every single one of us. He continues further, it's very fascinating. He says, and this is really why I'm bringing it up right now, he says that the idea also that the sages say, that the Chazal say, that in the Western Wall, the presence of God is still there. The Shekhinah of Hashem, there's a presence of God, he says, will never be removed from the Western Wall. And he says, again, it's this idea that we don't have a temple today, but there still remains a remnant. There still remains that spiritual force continuing on. And he says that it also represents this idea that the Shekhinah, the presence of God, is in the West, is by the Western Wall, and it remains there. And he says, why does it remain there? What's the idea? In this same piece, he explains, he says that it's this idea in order to inspire us that even in the exile, even in the Gullus, God is there, God is with us. And the Western Wall has a representation, and that's why it's really so sacred to the Jewish people. it's a reminder to us that we can still connect to God even without the temple. And we're waiting for the temple. Certainly, we're waiting for the end of days. We're in the messianic era now. We're waiting for the Takah B'Shofar Gadol, the proclamation of Mashiach with the blow of the shofar's horn, that Mashiach is here. But until then, says the Tzlach, we still can connect to God. And that's what the Western Wall represents. The Western Wall represents every Jew can still connect to God. We still could connect to God, no matter what the situation is, no matter where we are. And according to Jewish tradition, it will never be destroyed. The Western Wall there'll be some remnants of the temple. And this chelek, this portion, really is our spiritual almost nourishment, which it's with the Torah as well, which he says as well, that the Torah study that we still have. But additional to that, the Western Wall represents that we still have that connection. That connection will always remain. That connection will always remain. And it's quite fascinating. My father told me he should live and be well, and he should have a healing amongst amongst everyone else who needs a healing. But he told me that he came here to learn in yeshiva in 1956, and it was before the Yom Kippur Wars, before the 6-Day War, and the Green Line was actually much further away from the Western Wall, and the Muslims, they had control of this whole area that's behind me and even in front of me, the lobby, this whole the corridor before, and this whole area before. And he said that in 1956, all they were able to do, I don't think it's one of these rooftops over here. I think it's much further down, but he never showed me where it was, but he said they were able to go up on a rooftop and they were able to see a part of the Western Wall in 1956. So this is after the State of Israel. This is, again, before the wars, where they recaptured big parts of Eastern Jerusalem and Jerusalem. And here we are today. God made sure that the Jewish people have access to the Western Wall, right? We don't have access to the Temple Mount. We have to wait till Mashiach comes. In truth, there are many parts of the Temple Mount which is restricted for Jewish people because we are in a state of impurity. We need the red heifer, and certain parts you need to make sure to go to a mikvah, a ritual bath, before you go on. And in general, it's restricted to us. But the Western Wall, God made sure that the Jewish people had access. Like I'm here right now talking to you. I can't go near the Temple Mount. If I go near the Temple Mount, it would be dangerous for my life, God forbid. Other parts of Israel, I wouldn't, Maras HaMachpelah in Hebron, you have to go with a security detail. There's soldiers always there. You could go there, but it's a little bit more difficult. But the Western Wall, every Jew has access to. If you get on a plane, or right now in this class, it's right here. And it's not for nothing. God made sure, because it represents, this idea, says Rabbi Cheskel Landau, represents that there's still a remnant. You still could connect to Hashem. You don't have a temple. We daven that the temple should be rebuilt in our day. We daven 3 times a day. But we still have this connection, and we could go right up to the wall. And God made sure that even though there's other parts we don't, even though there's other areas that are dangerous, this area, thank God, is not dangerous. This area, you could go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because of what it represents. So that's really what I wanted to talk about tonight. And I think it's for every Jew, even if you're not here right now, what it represents. And it gives us encouragement that we can connect to Hashem, that we can connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to God. Every single one of us, we could pray to Him. He hears our tefillos, He hears our prayers. According to Jewish tradition also, all the prayers in the world, when we pray, whether it's New York, Paris, anywhere in the world, a heartfelt prayer that goes up. That's why we always pray towards Israel, because it goes up in heaven on the place of the Beis Hamikdash, on the place of the temple. on the Temple Mount. So that's why if you're in wherever you are in the world, you face
East.
Mizrach, you face at least, yeah, right, you face east, at least in the United States. I guess if you were living in Australia, it wouldn't be east, it would be a different direction. But you have to ask someone from Australia which way. But in Europe and in the United States, we face east. Why? Why do we face towards east? Because that's the spiritual direction that our prayers go. Our prayers go to Israel, and then in Israel, you're supposed to face Jerusalem. So wherever you are in Israel, all the arcs in the synagogues in Israel are supposed to be in facing towards Jerusalem. And then when you're in Jerusalem, you're supposed to face towards the temple. And when you're at the Western Wall, you're supposed to really face. I'm not sure why people don't do this. I was asking my brother the other day, but I believe that the Holy of Holies, you're supposed to face the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies is right over, is this way, is sort of diagonal. It's the corner area of the Temple Mount to the left. That's the direction of the Holy of Holies. So you should be slightly, I don't know, I guess for some reason, people face the wall. They face straight at the wall. And I guess, I'm not sure why. If I see the chief rabbi of the Western Wall, Rabbi Rabinowitz, maybe I'll ask him. I'll ask him that question. I don't see him here now. He's not here now. I know that for sure. I did see him. I was here last December, and I didn't go over to him, but I was here Friday night. He usually comes for Friday night. So if I see him tomorrow night, God willing, I will maybe I'll ask him that question. Either in my broken Hebrew or my English. I think he understands English. So his job is very diplomatic. So he has to bring a lot of all the people from the ambassadors, senators that come to Israel. He has to give them a tour of the temple. He's the official rabbi of the temple of the Western Wall, not of the temple, of the Western Wall. So, but that's this idea that it all comes back to this. So I'm having everyone in mind in the prayers. I'm going to get back. I did thank God I did the first 80 chapters of Psalms, and I have another 70 more I want to try to do and finish. And that's basically it. That's just taking it. I'm just trying to take it all in. It's with spirituality, it's how a person approaches it and prepares for it. They're able to relate to it. That's how God is like our shadow. And some people come here and it's picture time, and they just take a bunch of pictures. And it's a spiritual. The physical world is very loud. The body and the physical world is very loud. The soul, the neshama, is just as present as the body, but it's much more. There's an undertone of it in the world, and spirituality there's an undertone of it in the world, and it's just as present as the physical world. But of course, God gives us free will. We have to have that balance of free will. But if a person prepares mentally when they come to a holy place, that they're coming to God, they're coming before God, then, and they prepare themselves in action, in deed, in word. They sanctify it, and they treat it the way it should be treated. So they can have that elevation, they can have that feeling, and connection, to the godly. So I try my best. Sometimes I feel it, other times I don't. Whenever I do have the feeling, I find, I feel like it's a gift from above. We serve God, whether, sometimes we get the feeling, sometimes we don't. We still try to be consistent, regardless. I have, it's quite an experience coming here. There were actually rabbis, especially rabbis, the famous Brisker dynasty, Rabbi Soloveitchik, the rabbi, and his father, that they actually did not come close to the wall like everyone else comes. They went till where those lights are, and that building, that's the Western Wall Heritage Center. So there's a ledge over there, and they used to sit there and say psalms and pray over there, because they felt that approaching it too close is that was their feeling. They didn't want to do that. They felt like it was a very sacred area. They kept the distance. They felt that they're, when you're all the way in the back over here, you're still facing the wall. You're very close to it, so it counts, of course. Other rabbis though did go up to the actual front, and many rabbis did. Rabbi Avadia Yosef, of blessed memory. Tonight is actually the yortzeit of the Sephardic Rabbi Yosef, the very great rabbi. But he used to come here all the time, and many other great rabbis used to go, right up in front. But it should be a somber place. It should be a place of meeting of God, and a somber place. And it's it's a tourist attraction. So you have people that don't understand it's the how sacred it is. But a person prepares themselves. They pour that. How many people pour their hearts out to God? Some people have probably the most the most popular custom, or not really custom, but I don't know who started it. People put notes in the wall.
I did that when I was there with my grandpa. We did that.
Right. That's people do that. Many people do that.
And they keep it. They don't take it right. It's been there forever.
Well, that I have to look into. I think at some point they might do a cleaning, but they, because people bring in notes, but you don't necessarily have to do that. You can't, if it has meaning to you or whatnot, people do. But just praying to God, also praying to God. He gets it. God is in any language, in every language, as long as you understand it. Hebrew is the prayer. The Hebrew language you could pray even if you don't understand it, because it's the holy tongue, Lashon HaKodesh. It's the language of the Torah. But you could pray in any language as long as you understand any other language besides Hebrew, as long as you understand it. So that's really it. If anyone has any questions.
Well, God is always helping us out, because right now my doctor, my liver is going down. So they're giving it. So it's been like 2 years. It's getting worse, but God's still helping me out. So otherwise, I'm still good. So they're waiting for it to go down even worse. Then I put me in that time.
Well, Robert, I'm gonna have you in mind. We're gonna say a special prayer for you here at the wall. And you should have a healing. And I'm sorry to hear that. You should be healthy, God willing. And everyone should have Yeshua's salvations from God, because it comes from God. And it's all about connecting to Him. It's all about the connection and pushing ourselves spiritually to take on a mitzvah, to take on something good, to push ourselves a little more than we did previously, or even a little bit, and continue that upward climb. That's what it's all about. So here I am. It's already almost sunrise is in another 3 hours here. And
did we let you go to sleep?
I guess so. I'm actually going to try to finish the book of Psalms. I feel like I owe myself and everyone else to continue praying. I'm here. I got a chaperine, they say in Yiddish. I'm going to push myself a little more. I'm going to try to. Hopefully, I won't pass out. I try to rest a little earlier. I got a little bit of sleep, but my sleep pattern is so messed up from flying and everything that I don't even know. Yeah, I don't even know. But that's
it's easy when you get back home. No, that's the hard part.
Right. No, when I get back home, it's gonna be back to square one. The day before I leave, I'm gonna finally get used to sleeping.
Yeah. Take 3 days.
The next day. Right, exactly. And then the next day, I'm going to start all over again. It's gonna go back to square one. But
well, I appreciate that very much. I haven't seen it in a long time, so thank you for letting us look at it.
You're welcome. Yes, this is where it's at. And that's it. That's the beautiful idea. It's a beautiful place. Everyone have a Shabbat Shalom, a good Shabbos. Next Thursday,
give your father our regards.
I will. It's a difficult situation. My father is, he can open his eyes. He doesn't really speak much. It's unfortunate, but hopefully we'll have Yeshuas, we'll have salvations. Hopefully we'll have good things. We have to always be positive and,
That's for sure.
see the look in the good, see the good. And I've been going to him. I showed him videos of my children and of the synagogue. I showed him videos of the synagogue and some of the congregants I have on my phone, and he was looking at it, and I think that was that was important, and that's it. We keep him in mind in your prayers, please.
I
always
do every day.
We appreciate it, and
he helped me out. He helped me out a lot since I was 4 years old. I was with him all the time. I miss him.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate that. And listen, we should hear good things, and everyone should have a good Shabbos.
You as well. We'll see you when you get home.
You too.
All right,
Take
thank
care.
you.
All the best.
All right, enjoy
Bye-bye.
everything else. Bye.
Bye bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good
Good
job.
Shabbos. Bye bye.